Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Everybody's Business from Bloomberg Businessweek. I'm Max Chafkin.
And I'm Businessweek editor Brad Stone, in for Stacey Vanek Smith. And today, Max, you're treating us to a follow-up on Polymarket.
Yeah, we've got an interview with the biggest prediction market bettor around. His name is Domer. He is fascinating.
But before that, our friend Amanda Mull will join us in the studio to talk about her latest piece for Businessweek, the credit card wars. What's behind those sky-high fees from Amex and Chase, and what it tells us about the state of the economy.
And Brad, you've got the underrated story. What is it?
That's right. One leading AI firm just announced, Max, a major change and said their chatbot is about to get a little salacious.
You know, I've been thinking we needed an after-hours segment of Everybody's Business. I'm glad we'll be able to get there this week. Brad, you live in San Francisco. You're here in New York with me right now, in for Stacey, who's traveling. But the thing that is bothering me sitting here with you is you're missing Dreamforce, the big Salesforce conference, which is going on right now in San Francisco.
It's true. Here's what I'm not missing. Terrible traffic, closed streets, jammed restaurants, 50,000 people flooding into San Francisco. But I do feel like I'm missing something. I mean, the city comes alive. Salesforce is bringing in Metallica and Benson Boone to perform. The energy floods into the city. And Mark Benioff, Salesforce's founder and CEO, gets to play magnanimous host.
This is so embarrassing for San Francisco, that the Dreamforce, this conference held by a software as a service company, is the big event. But yeah. I guess it is the big event.
This is the counterculture here in 2025. But look, every company has these big events. Apple has WWDC, Facebook has Connect, customers come, press comes, the CEO gets up there and makes big pronouncements, and occasionally Max really puts his foot into it.
Right, and that's why we're talking about this. Because Mark Benioff, who, you know, until very recently, I guess right up until Donald Trump became president, was known as this like Democratic donor, influential liberal. He had helped raise taxes in San Francisco to pay for more aid for homeless people. He has done a complete 180 since Trump's election. He got on the phone with the New York Times and just by the by mentioned that he was in favor of having federal troops come into San Francisco. This is obviously happening in other cities. Democratic mayors and local officials are almost uniformly against it. Mark Benioff welcoming the change. He said, we don't have enough cops, so if they can be cops, I'm all for it. Welcoming in the federal troops to help Dreamforce out here.
And basically has spent the rest of the week trying to walk it back. But look, I mean, the White House does not like Mark Benioff. He is not in favor. He is associated with the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, his rivals like Larry Ellison and Oracle soaring at least in some part on the strength of their connection to the White House. So, you know, Mark is trying to be opportunistic here.
Yeah, I think he wants in on that, basically, is what you're saying. And why not? I mean, it's been good times for anyone who is closely connected to Donald Trump, or at least it seems that way.
Yeah, and the federal government is a big part of Salesforce's business, so I can see why he's sort of throwing stuff against the wall right now. At the time of this recording, at least, Salesforce stock is down 25% this year.
But Brad, I mean, you know this, but like, it's so funny because, first of all, Mark Benioff doesn't live in San Francisco. He lives in Hawaii. He wears Hawaiian shirts, which is fun, and that's kind of like his main thing. But anyway, he doesn't live in the city. He gave this interview from his private plane, which is always a good look. So like, there are a lot of things about this that are just kind of, I mean, just like amusing and just like you said, kind of crassly opportunistic.
And we were curious, right, what Dreamforce attendees made of this year's conference and of all the hubbub.
Yeah, so we sent out a Bloomberg tech reporter, Jana Nodler, out in San Francisco among the badged hordes, the Dreamforce attendees, to ask them, you know, how excited they were for this. Had they seen any celebrity sightings? And here's what she found.
How excited are you about Dreamforce this year?
It's my first time to be here, so very excited.
It's my first time. This is overwhelmingly wonderful.
Oh, we're pumped. I'm here representing Six Flags, and so we're doing some really cool things with Agentforce.
Last time I was here when they announced Data Cloud, so going from Data Cloud to all the AI stuff is pretty cool.
Are there any celebrities you spotted or that you're excited about?
Not yet, but I'm going to keep my eye open.
The band Metallica, that's what I'm excited for.
Well, I just saw Mel Robbins, and that was amazing.
Hopefully Mark Cuban's here.
It's always tough to get to see Matthew McConaughey, but he's usually pretty good.
How do you feel in San Francisco? Do you feel safe here?
Absolutely. I'm from New York.
Oh yeah, beautiful city.
I'm from Indianapolis, so it's probably better right now than it is there.
As long as you're close to Dreamforce, you're okay. But if you get outside of here, not so much.
Have you seen the comments of Benioff around bringing the National Guard into the city to keep it safer?
I don't think it's a bad idea.
I've been walking here from the train, so I didn't understand why they would need that here.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes me wonder if Dreamforce shouldn't move.
You know, safety is first.
That probably was, I don't know, a mistake. Come on. I mean, it's a city. It's not a border.
All right, there's one guy among these people who have some familiarity with U.S. law, and everybody else is just like, yeah, whatever, just bring some federal troops in.
I mean, I think the attendees have put their finger on something that perhaps Mark, because he's living in Hawaii and spending his time on his jet, doesn't quite realize, which is that the city has, I think, turned a corner. Obviously, there's some problems. It's also a city that is just it's not constitutionally willing to sit back and see the National Guard. I think that it would portend real protests.
Are you saying that the voices we just heard do not represent like the full gamut of political beliefs in San Francisco? Is that what you're saying, Brad? Because I think you're right. Like, there are a lot of people who are like, not only would not be that excited to see Mark Benioff release the new Agentforce, but who are probably like a little bit angry about Dreamforce even being there, worried about gentrification, don't like Donald Trump. I mean, I think you said this earlier, but I mean, there would be a naked bike protest for sure if the National Guard comes in, and a naked bike protest that would dwarf Portland, Oregon's naked bike protest.
I do not want to see the National Guard in San Francisco. I think there'd be some anger and protests, and the city, frankly, I don't think needs it right now.
I think we need to have the National Guard stop these tech conferences.
Yeah. That's funny.
Brad, are you familiar with the phrase or the word points maxing? Do you know what points maxing is?
I have a vague idea. We're talking about credit cards, right?
We are. We're talking about these super aggro high-end credit cards that cost hundreds or almost $1,000 a year. And there are all these people who are really obsessed with them. There's a crazy competition. In the latest issue of Businessweek, Amanda Mull, who is our guest, calls it the war for America's rich. It's all about credit cards, and we're going to get into that. Amanda's here now. Hey, Amanda.
Hi.
So can you just explain what is happening with premium credit cards for those of us who are like still in the dark ages of like you shouldn't spend hundreds of dollars for a piece of plastic that gives you miles?
Well, I think that like the top line is that they're taking over the world, sort of, or at least they're taking over the world in the U.S. The act of using a credit card is very, very similar no matter which one you use. So if a bank wants you to use theirs versus a competitor's, they have to figure out what they can offer you in order to get you to do that. And in order to offer really, really affluent customers more and more things, they've moved into all kinds of spheres of life. Credit card companies have long sort of colonized the airport and your travel experiences. They've been involved with hotels, car rental, things like that. But more recently, they've moved into events, sports, dining, all kinds of other things that rich people like in order to come up with new perks, new incentives, new coupons to attract a very particular type of customer.
This story was surprising to me because I've always felt like one of the dirty little secrets of the credit card business is that, rich people, wealthy people, they don't borrow from their credit cards, right? They don't run up debt. And so it was shocking to me that there is this battle over the affluent segment. Explain the economics of this battle.
Well, you're right that the wealthier people get, the less likely they are to carry a balance on their credit card. But that's only one way that credit card companies make money. There's two more ways. So one of them is fees, which are getting higher and higher at the high end. But the big one is interchange fees. And those are the fees that are paid by merchants every time anybody makes a purchase in their establishment on a credit card. They run between like 1% 1% and like 3.5%, sometimes more on the premium cards. And that is the source of a lot of revenue for card issuers.
Yeah, this is the crazy thing. Like, and we should say some of the names of these cards. So like we're talking about the American Express Platinum card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve card.
Well, those are the two biggest players right now. You've also got the Citi Strata Elite, the Capital One Venture X, and there are other smaller cards offered by other banks, but those are the big ones from the big banks right now.
And like you're saying, they make money because they charge the holders a fee as much as like $700, $800 a year, but also, and I don't think this is intuitive, like when you swipe that card at a store, the store pays a percentage and they pay more money if it's a high-end card. So if you're swiping just like I don't know what has the lowest fees.
You know, just like the basic sort of like entry-level credit card that your bank issues
Normie
to you.
Visa. And
Yes,
that's like,
yes.
what, like 1.5% or something, or 2%?
Yeah, it's like 1 to 1.5%.
But then if you swipe one of these super high-end cards, an American Express Platinum card, we're talking over 3%. Why would a merchant agree to that? Like, why does that, I can see why a credit card would want to charge more, but why is that like the way the system works?
Well, merchants are, in the US at least, are sort of stuck. If they want to process transactions from people who hold these cards, then they sort of have to take them. A lot of markets around the world limit the amount that credit card processors are allowed to charge in interchange fees, but the United States does not. So card networks, which are Visa, MasterCard, American Express, basically, can sort of set their own fees. And then banks that issue cards can decide which tier of processing they want to put those cards at. So the really, really high-end cards come in usually, 2.5% to as much as 5%. But when you put more and more like high-income Americans on those high-end cards, the penalty for retailers and merchants for not accepting those cards becomes greater and greater, because those are the people who make a lot of purchases. They spend a lot of money. This is why one of the reasons that American Express used to not be accepted at a lot of places, but so many high-income Americans, high-spending Americans now use American Express cards that if stores want to sell things to those customers, and they very much do, they just sort of have to eat it.
All right, Amanda, you talk in the story about this war for these wealthy consumers. What does it look like? Like, how are these companies competing with one another?
Well, you see it show up in advertising and marketing. That's probably where most people have noticed it, if they've noticed it. I went to the U.S. Open this summer. Amex and Chase are both huge sponsors of the U.S. Open. They both had built a series of enormous sort of spaces and booths and experiences on the grounds of the U.S. Open. Their luxury suites in the stadium are like sort of across from each other. There is a huge war to get into spaces where wealthy people spend time and where they have interests. So you see it pop up there. If you've been watching NFL this season, you see probably dueling ads for Chase Sapphire Reserve and Amex Platinum. They both refreshed their perks offerings this year and raised their fees. And so they're both involved in this huge push right now to convince new consumers that they are the one credit card to rule them all.
You got Capital One opening up these fancy coffee shops, including one like right under our building.
Yeah. You get Capital One opening coffee shops. You get credit card companies sort of racing into the airport lounge game. Before
the airport lounge game.
In 2013, American Express opened its first airport lounge in Vegas. And before that, all the airport lounges were owned by airports and sort of mediated by airports. And American Express was like, well, we know our shoppers love airport lounges, so like, why don't we do this ourselves? 2023, Chase was like, here's ours. They've opened 7 since then that are like huge and luxurious, made to order food. You can get a massage, you can get a facial, you can, there's all of these things. And now Capital One also has airport lounges. Like, they're just looking for ways to show up in the places where wealthy people are spending.
Okay, so we've talked about the appeal of these cards to merchants, the reason why the banks are fighting each other. But what is the appeal to customers? I mean, I admit I'm an Amex Platinum card holder. The fee rankles me, almost $1,000. The airport lounges are packed with people, buffets of milky eggs and fruit and COVID and influenza. I mean, I'm not maximizing my point. So why are these cards desirable, and why are they particularly interesting and desirable to millennials and Gen Z?
Well, part of this story is prestige. This is why all kinds of luxury goods are desirable on some level. Credit card companies have done a really great job in the past couple of decades of marketing these cards not just as payment implements or tools, but as things that mark you as a particular type of person.
Wait, it's that feeling you get when you pull out the platinum card, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
And then you hear the it plunks down. It's a little heavier than a normal card.
Yeah, well, and I did a story a couple years ago about why so many cards are made of metal right now. And somebody from American Express told me that within the industry, they call it plunk factor.
Yeah, the plunk factor.
It is fun to pull out like a fancy credit card and just, splash it down on the table. Prestige is a huge part of this.
Now, I do not have one of these cards, and I have resisted them partly because I think that airport lounges are dumb. And it's just the same as the airport, but more crowded. You can get food and drinks and seats and Wi-Fi in the normal airport without paying hundreds of dollars or waiting on a line or whatever. But I have wondered, I do have that FOMO feeling, Amanda, that I might be missing out. Am I making a mistake? Or are listeners who might be considering this making a mistake by not, paying up for an American Express Platinum or a Chase Sapphire Reserve or one of these other ones?
Well, I think this is the other big element of their appeal is that all of these cards promise thousands of dollars in annual savings if you pay the upfront fee and if you use their particular set of credits and rewards and perks correctly. The credits and rewards and things like that are largely bent toward travel. They're bent toward more and more recently luxury shopping, dining out. So if you're a person who goes on several vacations a year and eats out a lot in a major city and shops at Saks Fifth Avenue or Lululemon or has an Equinox membership, then you are going to see some savings on those purchases you would make anyway because of this. But then also what these cards do, I think, is create a set of perks, some of which are underwritten by third-party retailers, third-party brands who want to get their products and their services in front of this very particular set of American shoppers who are spending, the top 10% of American households spends 50% of the consumer purchases annually at this point. So this is a very powerful group of consumers if you are selling basically anything. And so this allows them to get their products and their services in front of these shoppers. And then the credit cards usually structure the rewards in ways that then sort of encourage you to create a habit with those new products or services. Like the Lululemon credit that American Express just introduced for its Platinum card, it's $300 a year, but it's in $75 quarterly increments.
Brad, take advantage of
It's
that.
just so
$75 a quarter. You can't miss it.
It's just so much work. But Amanda, you mentioned what you've called the K-shaped economy, right? The wealthy people responsible for over half of all consumer spending, potentially propping up this economy. So what does this battle between credit card companies and banks for the wealthiest shopper tell us about the economy right now?
Well, I think when you see products and services start to gather at either end of the extremes on the product and service continuum, you have an indication that brands, companies, retailers are looking at their sales data, looking at the economic data and going, there's not all that many people spending money, and there's not all that many people with discretionary income. And if you're a discretionary business, which Equinox, Lululemon, Apple Music, those all are, then it makes a lot of sense to turn your business toward satisfying the whims of people who are doing all the spending. And I think credit cards, like those third-party brands and retailers, have made basically the same calculation, because if you make your revenue on interchange fees, on credit card fees, then you need people who are spending a lot of money and who are spending frequently.
So, Amanda, you are clearly as sophisticated as it gets when it comes to these cards. What are you using? And I've admitted to being an Amex Platinum card holder. Max is a conscientious objector. What are you holding, and how do you maximize the points?
Well, I use an American Express Delta Reserve card.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, it's a fancy one. It is their highest end Delta co-brand card. It is above the Platinum. But how these names work out.
Did she just call me out?
Yeah. It has a lower fee,
Hers
though.
plunks harder than yours.
It's purple. It's a lovely shade of purple. No, how the co-brand cards work is a whole different thing, because you get premium versions of those too. The Platinum Delta Amex doesn't have the regular Platinum Amex perks, and it costs a lot less. So I'm originally from Atlanta, which means, of course, that I am a Delta flyer. And so it has perks that work for me about I get companion fares. I get upgrades and things like that. And it basically works out. I used the $200 Delta Stays credit to book a hotel room this year.
All right, listeners, if you have one of these credit cards or you have thoughts on one of these credit cards, send us an email, everybody's@bloomberg.net. That's everybody's with an S at bloomberg.net. Tell us if you are a Delta holder or a American Express holder or like me, a conscientious objector. Amanda, thank you for doing this. Stick around. You'll be back at the end of the show for our underrated segment.
I'll be here.
All right, Brad, last week on the show, Stacey and I talked to Joe Weisenthal about this new world prediction markets.
I loved it. It didn't make me any less skeptical of sites like Polymarket, but I learned a lot.
Well, I think I might be prediction pilled here, honestly. But in any case, we're just sort of like wondering, like, who are these guys who are playing in this world? I mean, obviously, this is a world that is sort of on the gray area in terms of legality, but is becoming very popular and very influential. And we found a guy. Now, his name, I'm going to tell you his pseudonym. It is Domer. But if you go to Polymarket's leaderboard, this is like the list of all the bets on the site, and you sort it by volume, you will find that this guy Domer, whose handle on Polymarket is just waking up, his avatar is a Ryan Gosling image, has bet $413 million on this site.
Is this his living? Is this what he does?
This is what he does. This is his full-time job, is making prediction market bets. And we want to understand like what this is like how a person who is sophisticated, who's really playing in this world, thinks about it, and also like where he sees it going. Like, does he think this is that we're like at the beginning of something? Is this a sideshow? So we got into all that, but this interview starts with Stacey just asking him like, what is the deal with all your handles?
Oh boy. Okay, let's listen.
Your handle on Polymarket has changed. It evolves. Do you mind talking a little bit about that? If people look for you there?
Yeah, it's almost always the latest Ryan Gosling movie. And I'm not sure. I think that started with Driver. So that was a long time ago. And then I've just kind of been slowly but surely replacing it with his newest movie.
Are you like a Gosling fan?
I mean, who isn't?
I'd love to just hear, first of all, this is your full-time job, right? Making bets on prediction markets. Would love to hear kind of how that happened, like how you found yourself in a position where you are, basically for your full-time job going and trying to predict everything from who is going to be the vice presidential pick all the way to like, I don't know, like what Taylor Swift song is going to be on the Billboard Top 100. Like, how did you wind up there?
Yeah, so out of college, I had just like a regular full-time job, et cetera. And on the side, I was kind of playing poker. And this was like the late 2000s. So online poker was like super popular. And I had started to make more money doing poker than I was at my job. And I was like, let's give it a go. And so I quit to play poker. But within probably maybe less than a year, I had found where you could bet on stuff like the Oscars. And so I was like, wow, I watched the Oscars. Like, I can bet on who's going to win. Like, this is really exciting. And then I found that you could bet on, the presidential candidates. And I'm someone that kind of like, I grew up watching Meet the Press on Sundays. Like, I'm into politics as kind of like, something that I'm tracking. And so I was like, okay, let's do this as well. And so it just really kind of launched from there. And I've been doing it full time ever since.
So like, what do your days look like? Are you just like doing research on a bunch of different things at once? Because you put a lot of work into this.
Yeah, this is my job. So, I mean, the first thing I do when I get up is I look at my phone. Do I have alerts? What has happened overnight? Because, in prediction markets, kind of sleep is the enemy, right? When you're asleep, the news is not sleeping, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, so you have to catch up on what happened while you were away, whether that's sleep or some other obligation. And then you have to immediately get to work on like some market that I'm trading in. Let's say Eric Adams to drop out, maybe has moved 20 cents. And it's like, okay, did it move 20 cents? Why did it move 20 cents? Was there a story in the New York Post? So it's kind of catching up on what's happening. And then as you're progressing through the day, it's tracking the news in real time, and you need the news as fast as possible, and you need the highest quality news, because sometimes news is misleading, or you get, a little morsel of something that hints at something else. So there's also a lot of nuance involved in terms of tracking the news and kind of figuring out what's actually happening as opposed to what people are reporting is happening.
Do you mind explaining what it is about this kind of betting market that was appealing to you? Because poker, I feel like that's a story that we're all pretty used to hearing, the game and the strategy. But for something like this, when I look at it, it seems so random and a little fly by night. Like, what was it about this that drew you in?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the issue with my issue with poker is it's like you could be playing perfectly, right? You could be playing optimally. You can be a calculator. You can be mathematically perfect, and you can still lose money because there's at least a little bit of luck involved. What kind of drew me to prediction markets was like, you can be right about something and you would be paid off. You can do the research, you can find the answer, and it's like there's not that much luck involved, and you can really kind of distill things down to like the root of the issue and kind of figure out what's going to happen.
Unlike Oscar bets and stuff? Because it seems like there's so much luck involved in that. Really? Explain that.
No, not at all.
Okay.
So I mean, if you think about it, right? So the Oscars are voted on by, I don't know how many people it is at this point, but a long time ago, it was like 6,000 people, right?
The
and that's not that
Academy,
many people.
yes.
If you're reading reporters, like these reporters talk to actual voters. So you can get a sense of what's popular and what's not. And you can look at all these precursors. And within Hollywood, there's all these smaller subgroups that hand out awards that are always giving awards to each other. So you can kind of figure out what's popular and what maybe is going to happen at the Oscars.
How many bets do you have going right now?
Oh my gosh. 1,000 maybe?
You have 1,000 bets.
We should just say, if you look
now.
at the Polymarket leaderboard, Domer has made $400 million worth of bets.
You've made $400 million worth of bets?
Yeah. It even shows the number of markets that I've bet in, and it's probably closing in on 10,000.
All right. So 1,000 open bets right now. Can you just take us through a couple of them?
Well, the big one right now that I'm literally tracking, and I may sneak and view some tweets while I'm recording this, is how many albums Taylor Swift is going to sell in her first week. That's one that I'm really tracking right now. There's some esoteric stuff like, is the Japanese prime minister going to actually be installed? Like, so it runs the gamut from stuff that's not that serious to stuff that's actually like super serious in some country.
How big are the bets that you have on these? Do you mind telling us?
Yeah, well, that also runs the gamut. Something like Taylor Swift, I'm betting a lot of money. Something like Japan, where I'm kind of trying to learn on the fly, maybe I only have like, a couple thousand at risk.
What's a lot of money?
Maybe closing in on $1 million, yeah.
You betting $1 million on Taylor Swift album sales?
I think right now it's probably 600,000, yeah. But it could be $1 million by Sunday. Yeah.
How many do you think she's going to sell?
I should say, Domer, we're recording this on October 9th. It will air 1 week from today, just so you know. So just if you're thinking about edge or timing or anything like that.
Oh, yes.
So I think the number will be just a hair under 4 million album sales, which is like an absurd amount. She's going to make the record by quite a lot.
Now, if you were betting on, like, in the stock market, if you were betting $1 million in the stock market, this would be a big bet. This would be, like, if you were betting on a company, this would be a company you could research for years. There would be all these reports from analysts. You could do all that deep research. Why wouldn't you put your money there? Why wouldn't you bet on, like, NVIDIA or something? Why would you choose to bet on Taylor Swift album sales instead?
That's a great question. So one thing about prediction markets is that, they're 0 to 100, right? So if you find a market that's super underpriced and it's trading at 5 cents and you think that's going to win, right? That's a 20 to 1 payoff. That's gigantic. Whereas if you're researching NVIDIA and it's like, okay, it's underpriced by $3, like your upside is so capped. And then the other thing about the stock market is there can be random variations. Like you can literally have the perfect thesis, like XYZ is going to happen. Like this is going to happen 2 months from now. But in the intervening 2 months, maybe there's some, crisis in South Korea where they've run out of, chip ingredients or whatever. Like there could be any number of things that kind of invalidate your thesis. Whereas in prediction markets, you can kind of wrap your head around the entire thing in once. And the 0 to 100 nature is also like super compelling as well.
But the downside is so much higher for Taylor Swift than it is, because even if NVIDIA stock doesn't do what you hope it will, you still own the stock. And this is a bet. So it does seem like there's that aspect of it.
Yes, it's a very risky endeavor. Yes, you have a parachute if you're quote unquote betting on a stock. In prediction markets, there's no parachute.
But that doesn't bother you, the no parachute.
No, and it's very appealing to me. It's like an arbiter. It's like an arbiter of the truth. Like if you're wrong, you will be punished. You will get 0. So it's the ultimate determiner, right? If you bet on NVIDIA and your thesis is wrong, the stock may go up anyway, right? But in prediction markets, if you're wrong, you're done. You've got 0.
Can I ask, Domer, I mean, the reason we're talking about this is that, the entity that owns the New York Stock Exchange put a big investment in Polymarket, which just a couple of years ago was like, I had been following the space. I thought Polymarket as this kind of like shady one that like was, I mean, basically illegal. It's still, we should say, in a bit of a gray area legally. I think technically Americans are not supposed to be placing bets on it. And yet, again, the owner of the New York Stock Exchange just made a huge investment. Why do you think these markets are becoming so popular, right? Like, why is this space going mainstream?
So I think in theory, people have loved prediction markets. It's been a thing for maybe decades. And it's always been like, oh, this is coming. Oh, this is coming. Oh, we're gonna make prediction markets. But this has kind of been like the actual mainstreaming of it. And it makes so much sense because, okay, let's say you're an oil trader, right? And you're trying to trade on what's going to happen in the Middle East, and there's a peace deal, and maybe oil drops by $5 or whatever. Like, you've not bet on the actual event. You've bet on kind of a derivative of that event, right? So prediction markets kind of distill it down to the actual thing that's happening. So a very popular market on prediction markets is, will there be a recession, right? And you can bet that in financial markets any number of ways. But in prediction markets, you can bet on the actual event. You can distill it down to its truth. Another reason that it's become so popular is because people nowadays, I feel like, are much more attuned to the data. They're much more into forecasting. Like Nate Silver was a nobody in 2008, and that type of analysis was like nothing like 20 years ago. Like you wouldn't even be on TV with that. Whereas now it's such a big focus. They're thinking about the world in numbers. And prediction markets is a good way to show the world in numbers.
How concerned are you about kind of like insider trading? So the risk that you're betting on a market and you are at a disadvantage because a participant is attempting to manipulate that market. I brought this up last week. Some of these markets are really small. There have been suggestions that in some elections, supporters of various candidates have been like making bets to attempt to like generate headlines. Like, how much does that concern you? And is that like a barrier here? Is that an opportunity? I'm just kind of curious what you think about the whole insider trading question.
I think it's a very interesting question, and it's something that kind of needs to be figured out. But I also feel like it's a predictable kind of like attack vector on a market, right? You can kind of figure out, okay, is this market able to be insider traded? And so if I have assessed that a market could be insider traded, like I'll probably put a lot less liquidity on that. So you can kind of figure it out, but obviously it is a issue.
Yeah, how worried are you when you're making a political bet? I don't know if you're betting on the New York City mayoral election or whatever, that the odds are being manipulated by a participant.
I mean, the New York City mayoral is a great example because somebody who signed up as a brand new account bet on Adams to drop a lot of money right before he dropped.
Really?
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And it's kind of cartoonish because that seems like exactly the candidate who would insider trade his own dropout announcement.
All right, Dahmer, we're going to stay in touch. We're going to find out what happens with this Taylor Swift bet. And we will not participate in the markets. We're going to stay objective.
But if I were to participate, my money would be on you, Dahmer.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great one.
I want to know who is taking the contrarian bet on Taylor Swift album sales. That's not a great bet. But actually, related, every time Domer scores a win, somebody else, or at least an equal value is being lost. I'm not going to say there's compulsive behavior here, but there's certainly the potential for that. And so how many losses are being enabled by this platform here? In regulated markets, the SEC are supposed to protect the investor. Nothing is protecting the investor here.
Normal people just screwing around on the internet are not necessarily as attuned to the risks that somebody who's like a professional bettor. And a normal person is going against Domer. Like if you're going to try to bet in the mayor's race, not only might you be betting against Eric Adams himself, but you could also just be betting against some very sophisticated traders who are better at this than
Domer is the equivalent of a speed trader, right? He's just better at this than you are.
Well, is he though? So you heard in the interview, Domer made this huge bet, and after the interview, I reached out to him to ask him if he could sort of give us an update on how the bet went.
This is the Taylor Swift album sale bet.
This is the Taylor Swift album sale bet. He said it could be as high as $1 million by the time it resolved, his money on the line. So he recorded a voice memo. I have not listened to it. You have not listened to it. I think you may know the outcome of this bet, but I do not know. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Domer. Did he lose $1 million or not?
I can't wait.
I think on the podcast, I predicted a hair under 4 million albums for Taylor Swift. Well, in the end, she sold 4.005 million albums. And what that meant was that I was doing this really big hedge on how many albums she would sell, because the two big components are like physical sales and like selling the whole album on iTunes, and then also streaming like Spotify and stuff like that. And so there's two big components. And so one of the sites was all encompassing, right? So that 4 million number. And on that site, I was betting over 4 million album sales. And then on another site, it excluded streaming. And on that one, I was betting under 3.5 million album sales excluding streaming. Well, a miracle literally happened, and maybe it was serendipitous because I went on your podcast, but I won both bets because the one went to above 4 million, 4.005, and then the second one was like 3.487 or something. So just by the skin of my teeth, I won both bets, and I ended up making around $80,000.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Domer.
But
amazing.
Also our point, which is he is so sophisticated in how he placed those bets on two different sites, and anybody who placed the contrarian bet there just lost money.
Yes. And I think there are two questions. Like, one is the wisdom of betting on one of these things and whether you should be like taking money out of your 401k to gamble on Taylor Swift. I think the answer there is no. But I do think, should you be listening to people like Domer? And the answer there is yes. We had the Taylor Swift album sales a week before the rest of the world knew. I do think, like, as like a news obsessive, I find Polymarket in particular to be like super interesting, just as a way to kind of like get a baseline view of what is going to happen in the future. All right, Brad Stone, I have been told that you have an underrated story for us this week, and Amanda Mull is here to join in the fun.
Wonderful. So. Yeah, it's a little saucy. Okay, so in an X post this week, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, maker of the leading chatbot, ChatGPT, said the company had solved how to protect people with mental health issues, and that it would now support mature conversations in December when it introduces age verification. So Sam basically said they want to, quote, treat adult users like adults, and in other words, allow ChatGPT, if you want it, to talk dirty to you.
I think they're going to keep it very classy here, Brad.
A respondent on X called it perv mode to Sam. Sam said, only if you want it. But no, it's really remarkable to me. These companies have gotten a lot of criticism for how their products have the potential to manipulate vulnerable users into developing unhealthy emotional relationships. And they seem to have really thrown caution to the wind and embraced this vision of AI that we saw in the classic movie Her. And at the risk of their users perhaps falling for the ones and zeros.
So I just have two thoughts. One is, I don't think the GPT porn is really the issue here. It's more the point you're making, the broader point about like confusing people, causing them to, fall deeper into these rabbit holes, like doing things that normal people are not really equipped to deal with. We've seen a lot of stories, including some that Bloomberg have published, about the ways that AI algorithms can essentially drive people crazy, either because it's presenting them with self-harm content, or it's like convincing an elderly person that they have a girlfriend that they don't have, and then they go travel off and get hurt or something. But then my other thought is, this is kind of pathetic. And it makes me worried for OpenAI's business, because if you think about other sort of hot companies, they don't usually embrace porn. That's kind of like not a sensible thing to do if you've got a great business. If you've got a great business, you want to charge big companies lots of money to use your service. You don't need to find, losers on the internet to fill out your revenue, right? YouTube didn't have adult content. Facebook didn't have adult content. None of these companies do, because it's bad for business. So the fact that ChatGPT is doing this feels like a bearish signal for the company.
Max, I think if you read Sam Altman's tweet, he says it's fine. He says that they've solved mental health, first of all, which is what an advance for society.
They did it so quickly, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they solved age verification, which is also wow, what new technology. And so it's fine. You can be pervy with ChatGPT now in the privacy of your own home if you're a consenting adult. Don't worry about it.
Well, let me just say, when GPT-5 came out, and there was a lot less emotional affirmation in the chatbot responses, users kind of rebelled, right? And a lot went back to 4. They seem to want that kind of relationship with their chatbot. And, Elon, who's behind with Grok, has made it a sort of selling point, right? That he's going to have these companion personalities within Grok. And, the rivalry between the two companies is fierce. As Avenue Q said 20 years ago, the famous musical comedy, the internet is for porn. And so, OpenAI doesn't want to be outflanked here.
I'm sorry, but if you are curing cancer, if you have the most powerful...
we're not doing that anymore.
We've abandoned that. That's not profitable. We're doing porn.
You're let me just, we're going to do that. But hey, why not? I guess, I don't know. Like you said, Amanda, if they've really solved these problems, then maybe it's fine. But
then it's fine.
It all just seems like a little weird.
This to me sort of reeks of cooking your brain on X, the everything app, because so much of the chatter on there is about these AI waifus and being able to have a sexy AI girlfriend, and I do wonder if the discernment of the people making these decisions at OpenAI isn't perhaps colored by that. It does seem sort of sweaty. It seems
good word.
It seems sweaty in a couple of ways.
This show is produced by Stacey Wong. Magnus Henriksen is our supervising producer, and Amy Keene, our executive producer. Sam Rogich handles engineering, and Dave Purcell fact-checks. Sage Bauman heads Bloomberg Podcasts. Special thanks to Jeff Muskus, Julia Rubin, and Maria Ling. If you have a minute, please rate and review the show. It'll mean a lot to us. And if you have a story that should be our business, or you want to tell us about which erotic chatbot you prefer, email us at everybodies@bloomberg.net. That's everybodies with an S at bloomberg.net. Thank you for listening, and we will see you soon.